Hello, I'm Jo from Starjumpz, and I'm here with Louise Creasey, who's an integrative child and adolescent psychotherapist. Louise is going to tell us about psychotherapy for children. And Louise, do you want to introduce yourself a bit more and start us off?
Of course. Thanks, Jo. Thanks for having me. I'm Louise. I'm a child and adolescent integrative psychotherapist. I work from children from as young as 4 up until the ages of 18. Kind of integrative means that I draw on a variety of theories and modes, but also I use kind of the arts and play when working with young people and children. It's about kind of really adapting, the therapy to the individual needs of each young person that I meet with.
Yeah. And what are the sort of signs that you would say parents should look for if they might be worried that their child is struggling, but not sure whether they actually need to seek some help, such as psychotherapy? What should they look for?
Well, I think I always kind of say to every parent that I work with is that you know your child best, and that you would be probably one of the first people that might start to notice some changes in their behavior. And there might be some differences in kind of how they're socializing, how they're getting on at school. You might start to see kind of a child that's struggling with kind of a lot of anxiety, that might be kind of having more kind of moments of overwhelm, or kind of having real struggles to kind of bring themselves back down after having kind of what we might see as kind of like an episode of a meltdown. So you'll start to see shifts in how they're able to kind of manage their emotions, or you might even see that your child kind of really shuts down. I think another thing that's kind of important to look out for is if they start to kind of avoid the things that they might normally kind of enjoy. And that can be quite a common sign that there's something that's not kind of working so well for them. So there can be lots of different areas you might look out for in their behavior. What kind of changes have you noticed in their behavior? Have like kind of friendships changed? Are they starting to withdraw? How are they kind of within family life? So it's just really kind of noticing kind of, how your child kind of usually is to compare to how they might be presenting now. I think also we can kind of also look at attention issues in children. If they're struggling to kind of maintain attention, there might be an over-reliance on kind of entertainment consoles, so kind of really kind of withdrawing from family life. Also, your child might be simply telling you that they're having a difficult time. Usually children kind of will communicate by their behavior that there's something that's kind of going on underneath. I always say kind of all behavior is a form of communication, and it's just trying to kind of work out what that communication is. And that's kind of how a therapy can be helpful.
We've just had a question asking, how is psychotherapy helpful for children who might be on the spectrum, who may be struggling at school?
I've worked with quite a few children that are neurodivergent, so either a diagnosis of ADHD or the neurodevelopmental disorders such as autism. I think what can be really helpful in therapy is having an adult that is there just for you. So it can really help to build self-esteem and resilience, especially for a child that is experiencing kind of anxiety or low confidence. It gives them to have an opportunity to kind of have a relationship is just for them. Some children can really struggle with relationships, so it's an opportunity for them to kind of practice having a relationship with an individual that's kind of really attuned to their needs. Some children might find it very difficult to express how they're feeling, and that's quite common, that children aren't able to find the words to say how they feel. So therefore, that's when we can use kind of play or the arts as a really helpful means of being able to communicate, what's going on the inside. And I think with a child with ADHD or ASE, it can be quite common that they might struggle with change or with transition. So kind of having having a space with someone to kind of navigate some of those difficulties can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you seen children that might mask in school? So at school, they appear to be absolutely fine, and then everything goes a bit pear-shaped when they come home and they're in their safe place, and they can just let go of all the things they've held on to during the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so common. And I can find myself in a meeting in one of our review sessions with a parent, which we kind of do, every 12 weeks. And I'll be saying to them that they're doing really well in their sessions. They're engaging, they're bringing their feelings. We've got some kind of important themes that we're working on, and they're doing really well at school. And then it can be really hard for the parent to hear that actually when they're at home, they're getting quite a different child. And so that is quite common. Home and parents are that child's safe place. So it's about kind of supporting the parent. The work then becomes supporting the parent to be able to kind of contain some of those kind of like meltdowns when the child returns from home. And that's kind of where the work with the parent becomes really important, in kind of supporting them to be able to kind of manage and understand what their child is showing them.
And how can parents support psychotherapy sessions, and how much do you share with parents when you're seeing a child?
Well, I'll usually try and meet with a parent every 12 weeks. I let the child know that I'm going to be meeting with either mum or dad, or mum and dad. And if there's anything that they would like to share, I think it's important that the child knows that we work in collaboration with their parents or carers. And essentially, it's, the space between myself and the young person in therapy. It's confidential unless there is something unless it's a safeguarding issue, and that is something that's kind of contracted from the start. So it's kind of sharing kind of themes that have come in to the therapy session. I would do that, but I'm not going to explicitly say that this is what the child has kind of shared with me, because the child needs to feel confident in our relationship and the trust that's been built. But parents, they play such an important role kind of in the therapeutic process, and I always want to work with parents and to have regular kind of check-ins with them, just to find out how things are at home, and if there's any kind of tips or strategies that we can think of together in order to support the child kind of when they return home, because therapy is usually only 50 minutes a week, and for the rest of that time they're either at school or they're at home.
It's probably how long is a piece of string, but how long on average do you see a child for? How many sessions might you see a child for? I know it's very variable.
I think it depends on the child. I think to start with, what I'll always say is that we have 3 sessions to start with, and in that time I'll just be kind of assessing the child's readiness for therapy, and kind of putting together a bit of kind of a plan that I can share with parents to let them know the child needs to, to see if the child is the right fit for therapy, and if I feel like I'm the right fit for them as well. It needs to be in a collaborative approach. With some children, for example, if it was an adopted child that I'd be working with, the therapy is likely to be quite lengthy, kind of usually around a year, if more, if that's possible. Otherwise, it's something that we would kind of continue to review throughout the process at our kind of frequent parent review meetings, and we'll take from there. Psychotherapy isn't necessarily a magic wand. It is a process that needs to take time. It's about building a relationship with the therapist and the young person. And that can take, at least, a couple of months, to say, for the child to feel comfortable to be able to kind of come and bring themselves and their thoughts and feelings to me. So it's about creating that safe space that the child feels kind of secure within. Is kind of the first part of therapy.
Somebody has asked, can you support parents who are separated when you're seeing a child, and how would you do that usually?
Absolutely. Well, I like to be kind of open communication with both parents. And I would say that if parents want to have the kind of the meetings together, that's something that I can arrange and I'm happy to facilitate. However, if parents feel that they would prefer to have separate meetings, and that's something that we can also do as well. Ultimately, we want to do what's with kind of keeping the child at the center of everything. And so there is open communication and dialogue between us all. But if there are kind of difficulties with both parents being in the room, then of course that will be respected.
Yeah. What age can you see children from? What's the youngest that you would
I would usually say for myself around the age of kind of the beginning of school years. So 4, there are some therapists that might work a lot younger than that. But I would say that for me, it's from 4 and then I work all the way up until 18. I think children that are a lot younger, that early intervention is so crucial. They're a lot more disinhibited in terms of working with the arts and with play. And so you can do some really meaningful work with children when they're very young, actually.
Yeah, lovely. So how would a session for a young child compare with an older sort of teenager? What would the differences be?
I think if we start by thinking with a younger child, and even up to kind of ages of 10 or 11, they're a lot more able to kind of work with the arts and be more playful. I just think that's kind of inherent in that kind of developmental stage. And so they communicate. That's their form of communication, is through kind of the arts in terms of an image. So like, show me how that feels. And they might create a painting and then we'll sit and look at that together. Whereas with, say, an adolescent, it's a lot more of a collaborative approach. We might be like kind of reflecting on their relationships together, or something that they're bringing specifically to the session that they want to think about together. Whereas with a younger child, it's more kind of what's coming up in the moment. And with an adolescent, a teenager, I found that there might be a specific issue that they want to bring to therapy that day. If they've had a difficult conversation with, a family member or a peer that they want to kind of sit about and think about together. I think with adolescents, it's really about respecting their kind of autonomy and their growing and developing independence.
Yeah.
And it's about kind of honoring that as well. Also, I think with adolescents, they might not want me to have as much contact with parents. I'd always be curious as to why that might be, and to think about that with the young person, because I believe in transparency and honesty between, home life and what goes on with me. But actually an adolescent is able to say, no, I don't want you to do that. Whereas with a child, it's a little bit more about kind of having that meeting with the parent, if regardless.
Somebody has asked a question about what sort of arts do you use in your therapy?
It can be anything from clay, using paints, pastels. We can have an arts box, if you like, that the child can kind of get involved with. Messy play, anything really that the child wants. It's all kind of out on the table. It's non-directive. The child will choose what they might like to do that day. I'll often have a child that says, I fancy doing some painting, and then we'll get the paint kit out. Or other times they might want to just play with the clay and just kind of hold it in their hands, and it can be a real sensory experience that can feel quite grounding for them. Or it might be drawing, or kind of putting some beads onto a piece of string or something like that. It can be kind of very much how the child what the child would like to do.
And do you use a sand tray? Because that's
I do use a sand tray. Yeah,
one thing that is known quite well for psychotherapy is the famous sand tray.
Yeah, we can use the sand tray. I have a big box of figurines, and we'll kind of get those out and look at the figurines as a way to look at kind of things that are going on in their world at that moment, or kind of important relationships. And kind of some children might even not go into the figurines. They just love having their hands in the sand. And, you know, just kind of like running it in between their hands, and there might be just kind of a conversation coming while they have, you know, while they've got that material.
Yeah, lovely, really good. And what would you say the outcomes that you are aiming for the, I mean, I know it will vary depending on the child, but sort of broadly, what are the things that you're hoping that psychotherapy will help the child with?
I think ultimately, I always feel that with kind of therapy, it gives a child like an opportunity to express kind of feelings that are really hard to put into words. Kind of name it to tame it. Actually having a word for a feeling can be really kind of help the child to really calm. You know, it can build resilience, and just to kind of help make sense of the world around them, find more helpful ways of kind of coping with big feelings, or if in some, you know, with adolescence, it might be kind of thinking of ways and strategies to be able to cope with some more kind of destructive behaviors and risk-taking behaviors. But I think ultimately it's really about kind of I'm a very relational therapist, so it's about kind of co-creating this relationship together, and kind of through that in itself becomes very kind of regulating and a way in which to kind of help a child make sense of kind of what's going on around them and their internal world as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important work, because I think the world can sometimes feel so overwhelming and confusing for children, especially with, you know, social media today and all they're getting bombarded with their phones and
Absolutely.
everything.
I think, yeah, to be a young person, especially kind of an adolescent today, it's really tough. There are so many challenges. And as you say, kind of having, you know, just smartphones are everywhere, and kind of social media, we've got, you know, they've got all of the news that's really scary just kind of at their fingertips.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, with young women as well, and kind of appearances and the filters that, you know, you can put on, it gives a really unrealistic expectation, basis, you know, on how we should kind of be in our presentation. Yeah, so I think, and just, you know, other children that might struggle with their kind of social and communication skills can very much get drawn into an online world, kind of through gaming, and that can really kind of cut them off from having more kind of real live experiences with people.
Yeah, I mean, when I think back to my childhood, it was, you know, you came home from school and you just had quite, you know, quiet, relaxing time. There was no, you know, you might have got on a landline and made a phone call. That was about it for maybe 5 or 10 minutes of the evening, and the rest of the time, you know, there was peace. But
Well, you're kind of occupying yourself. I know for me, I'd come home from school and then I'd have my snacks, and then I'd be like maybe watching some cartoons, and it'd be like Neighbours would be on, and that would be my screen time kind of end, you know, from 6 o'clock, and then kind of go and amuse myself, either playing with my siblings or kind of in my room. But now it's the amount of, I work with teenagers, and just they will scroll, and that has now become their tool, you know, in order to regulate themselves. So removing a phone from a teenager can feel like such a threat, because that has become an extension of who they are.
Very tough. We've had a comment that bullying follows children home now. It doesn't just stay at school.
Absolutely.
Because of phones. It's
yeah. And I've been in the company of children in kind of some of my other work where they're kind of, I call them like the keyboard warriors, and they're kind of battling back and forth with one another on Snapchat. Like, what's going on here? And it's just, it's a really it's a world that is so unmonitored, and children can just, you know, it's children raising children kind of on these platforms. And kids can be really mean as well. And then there's no just shutting it away when you leave school. As you know, someone has said, it's following them into the home all night, and the pressure to be responding to messages all of the time. And that can be so overwhelming with children, I think, especially when there's the transition into year 7 and children are put into these kind of large WhatsApp groups.
I didn't even realize that.
Yeah, they'll put them all in. And then I'm not sure, I'm hoping that that's going to shift with kind of what's coming through around smartphones. But yeah, that can be the case. And that can be so overwhelming for a child, thinking that they've got to constantly reply and, you know, be on. And, you know, no wonder we're seeing a rise in, you know, our children that are presenting as being really anxious or with low mood. It's totally understandable. But I think kind of my message to parents is that, you know, it's totally understandable that you might be kind of worried for your child, but also to remember, with the right support, children can be incredibly resilient. And so I think, you know, as bleak as it can sound, that they're not all hope is lost, you know.
No, absolutely not. You mentioned to me before we started that you do see sometimes the siblings of neurodivergent children, as they can often be kind of slightly overlooked because the attention so much has to focus often on a child who's neurodiverse.
Yeah, no, that has been kind of like a common referral that I've had, actually, or it's kind of come out in the work that it might be a child that I'm seeing that will have a sibling at home that may have a diagnosis of ASC, and there can be some really tough behaviours that other sibling is having to kind of manage and be alongside within the home. It can really domineer and take over home, because the child would need, the other child understandably needs additional support. So the other sibling can sometimes be left in a bit of a caring role, or kind of just, you know, being on a bit of the outside, whilst the other child is getting a lot more, because they kind of need that. So actually kind of I've found that having kind of a space in therapy just for them I've been told that has been really helpful for that sibling as well, because, you know, it definitely has an impact on the whole family.
Yeah, I know, that's really good. I've had a question. What advice would you give to parents to stay connected with their teens and up to date with current trends?
So I always say, like with teenagers, the best place to have a conversation with them is in the car. Always. It's like really non-confrontational. You're not sitting them down like you're going to have a lecture. If there's something difficult or sensitive that you want to speak to your child about, like in the car, or you know, whilst you're cooking or just doing something, so it feels quite casual and not like an interrogation. But I find in the car it's great because you're side by side. If they've had enough, you know, I don't want to talk about this anymore, they usually let you know you can put some music on, look out the window. And it's also a great opportunity to say to your child, you know, what music are you into? Let's listen to it. And they can share some of their interests with you as well. But yeah, I definitely think kind of in the car is always a great space. And if it is a difficult conversation, then it's kind of contained in that space as well. And it's shut the door and then it's gone. But also I think just be yourself. I think teenagers are very, they can, if they think that you're trying to be cool, then they can shut you down quite quickly. So it's, it's just about kind of being curious about kind of what's going on for them, you know, that there might be like a behavior that you're kind of scratching your head about, and it can feel really exhausting to be alongside, but kind of really think is what I would say about what that behavior is trying to communicate, and, you know, what need is needing to be met then, you know, and just, but that would be my main tip for teenagers. And
is there a way of asking them questions that you would advise? Because
I think teenagers,
I know that asking questions often would be not
well, that's it. Stop asking questions. Why are you asking me so many questions is often the
response.
The response that you'll get. It's just judging where you feel that your teenager's at. If they're, you know, if they're seeming really relaxed, time it, and then that might be kind of a good idea to kind of ask the question. Or I guess it's about just being kind of curious as well, as opposed to what they might feel is kind of intrusive, which I think that's kind of how that kind of question or that interrogation can sometimes feel like. And I'll always say, and I remind myself, just remember what it was like to be a teenager. And I think that can always, for me, I'm like, oh, it was such an uncomfortable time of my life, because there's so many kind of changes that you're having to navigate, and it can be really tricky. And I think it's just about kind of having empathy for young people going through, you know, the changes that take place then. And there's a huge amount of pressure with exams, and as we say, with kind of social media and appearance, and kind of wanting to seem kind of a certain way.
Adopted children, that is a client group that you are able to work with, and is often funded by the adoption support, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The the ASG, the Adoption Support and Special Guardianship Fund. And each child is able to, or you're able to apply for some funding. I think, I'm not sure of the amount exactly, but each child that is either has been adopted or within the special guardianship, under special guardianship, can apply for having some therapeutic support. And there would need to be a therapeutic needs assessment that would take place first. And sometimes psychotherapy can form part of that, alongside therapeutic parenting and other interventions as well.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm just having a look to see if there were any other questions that I had. I don't know if you've got any other things to add.
No. Yeah, I think just that, as I was saying there, just about being a bit of a feelings detective with your child and young person, really kind of wandering around and being curious about what's going on underneath the behavior. That can just really can really kind of enhance empathy as well, which is really important, to feeling kind of close and bonded and to feel understood. So that would be the main one. And also, with kind of another kind of tip that I always say with parents is, like, set aside time each week, make it consistent, just to play, like a diet of play in the week, where the child gets to choose what they'd like to do. And then it only has to be half an hour, and just kind of take that moment just to really kind of tune in and be with your young person.
Follow their lead.
Exactly. Follow their lead. Trying to be too intrusive. I know that it's so easy, isn't it? So, no, we'll do this or we'll do that.
What about doing it this way? No, just
exactly. Let the child choose. Whether that's playing a game of Uno or Jenga or whatever else. Just something that, you know, that you can do together, just to have a really kind of like playful, joyful time.
Yeah, no, that is an amazing piece of advice. I found it when I was a young mum. I did a parenting course, and that was one of the things that was kind of prescribed, was finding those, you know, like 15, 20 minutes a few times a week, or half an hour, and just sitting with my child and realizing that if I wasn't being mindful of what they wanted to do and following their lead, I would have been suggesting different ways of doing things. So, kind of adding to their speech or correcting it, and just realizing how much you can sort of inhibit their creativity and their need to communicate and play in their own way, which is so lovely when you do watch them and let them do what they, you know, really would like to do.
And absolutely, and it's just about seeing what comes up. And it's probably in those moments that they might communicate to you that actually there's a bit of an issue going on at school, or there's something about friendships that they want to explore with you because they're feeling relaxed. And it's in those moments that they might be able to kind of, you know, share some more with you about what's going on.
I've had a question. Where can therapy take place? Can it take place? We have Starjumpz Centre in Brighton where it can happen, but do you ever do at home or at school? I
wouldn't do at home. I would go to school or into the centre, just because if there's like something difficult that the child's wanting to bring up, I think you don't want that in the home. I don't think that you want the home associated with that. So kind of meeting in a school or kind of at a centre as well. And it will be in it's very, it's important that it's at the same time, the same place each week. That consistency is one of the backbones of therapy. So it's a very kind of predictable space for that young person that they can feel safe in.
Yeah, that's really good. And we've had a question. Do you ever do a therapeutic needs assessment or assessment with occupational therapists?
I don't. No, that's not something that I would do, but there might be another psychotherapist within Starjumpz that is able to offer that.
Yeah, we do in our centre in Crowborough. We have psychotherapist Carrie who does therapeutic needs assessment with occupational therapists. So that is something that we can offer there. Our Brighton centre is in Ship Street, which is right in the centre of Brighton. It's quite easy to find and very close to the sea, which is lovely. Yeah.
And there's lots of coffee shops around as well.
Yes.
So if you want to bring your child, then you can have them for 50 minutes while you go. Yeah, take some time for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody is interested in exploring working with you, you offer a free 15-minute phone call, I think, so that you can just chat through.
Absolutely. I think if you're feeling kind of like, oh, is therapy the right thing for my child? Like, let's have a chat and we can kind of explore that together and then take it from there. But yeah, so definitely a consultation first, and then we can decide whether or not we can move on to the next stage, which is kind of those first 3 assessment sessions.
Which is lovely, because I think sometimes people really want to just have a phone call to get a sense of you as a person, and if they connect with you,
absolutely,
it's really, really helpful, and to just run a few things past you. So that's really great. And so if you are interested, you can email info@starjumpz.com. I've got the ticker tape along the bottom with the email address if you want to find out more or to arrange a phone call with Louise. Is there anything else you'd like to add to what we've talked about?
I think just to kind of really kind of emphasize is that, I don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach to therapy for children and adolescents. It really depends on the young person, their experiences, their kind of strengths, their weaknesses, the things that they're interested in. And I will very much adapt myself to each person and, what works best for them. And it's, I can't stress it enough that it's collaboration and working with parents. We're all kind of, building this together.
Lovely. Thank you to our audience who've asked some brilliant questions. And thank you, Louise, for joining me. It's lovely to spend some time chatting to you. I'm in Tunbridge Wells. Louise is in Brighton. So it's useful to have this way of connecting and being able to have a chat when we're in different locations. So thank you for joining us, and let us know if you would like to find out more information, and have a good rest of the evening.
Thank you so much. Enjoy your evening. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.